I want to ask about something about spouse visa. What are the different types of spouse visas available for immigrating to the United States?
Spouse visa, there's just one category. If someone gets married to a US citizen, process-wise, we say that they first need to file this application called I-130 on the USCIS website. And if the spouse is already in the United States, let's say someone is already in the United States and they wanted to adjust the status, that is available. And that is actually relatively easier to do. And the wait time may be a little bit shorter. If someone wants to do a consular processing, meaning the spouse is abroad and they got married to a US citizen spouse, in that scenario, it's extremely important about the evidence. I usually ask my clients to write a timeline of when did they meet, where did they meet, how did they meet, how did the relationship evolve, so that USCIS and the US Embassy, they understand that the relationship was entered in good faith. Because there have been so many frauds about procuring green card through marriage-based, people should take it extremely seriously, the evidences that they offer as a part of the application. It's just not sufficient to offer wedding pictures, but it's also important to get affidavits and letters from friends and family who can testify about the relationship. How did the spouses meet? The better the application is prepared, it increases the likelihood of success and the processing time.
How does the CR1 visas differ from IR1?
So for immediate relative, it is faster. Any visas that is immediate relative, which will be spouse, parents, children, it will be a lot faster processing. But part of the processing, sometimes delay happens because it depends on how the application was prepared. When we take a case, we want to make sure that we are providing enough evidences. So for anyone who is preparing their application themselves and they just got married to a US citizen, I would suggest please be mindful of sharing your story. How did you meet? Where did you meet? When did you meet? Don't just submit the wedding pictures, but also share your story so that they understand that the relationship was genuine.
What are the eligibility requirements for obtaining a spouse visa?
So eligibility requirement, first and foremost, that the marriage was entered in good faith. And that's where all the evidentiary requirement comes into place. Because of, as I say, there have been so many malfeasance in the past, it's extremely important that the relationship evidence is documented and provided very well. Secondly, the spouse who is applying, they need to have a certain qualifying income depending on the household size. They also have to provide what we call as an affidavit of support, their tax returns. They need to provide information of taxes that they have filed in the US for the last 3 years and need to provide a copy of the tax return. We recommend to provide copies of the last 3 years, but they must provide copy of at least 1 year. But the information about their total income, they will need to provide for the last 3 years. And they will have to provide their pay stubs if they work as what we call as a W-2, which basically means an employee. If they own a business in the United States, they will have to provide their financial statement. All these financial documents are required to show that they can sponsor their spouse and bring them to the United States and support them.
If someone already have applied for a spouse visa, but for some reason, maybe she or he got blacklisted or just trapped into any kind of legal issues in our country, which difficulties they're gonna face?
Usually, the term they use is administrative processing. For some reason, if they don't issue a visa right away, they say they're doing administrative processing. There's a lot of background check that takes place, which is something, we are not completely privy to, which may be for national security, which may be for, extra name check for whatever reason that the State Department can take. In terms of steps, I would suggest, of course, talk to a qualified attorney and get professional advice to see what could be done. Sometimes you can ask for supervisory intervention in the US Embassy, if a supervisor can review the file, it's not guaranteed whether it will expedite it, because some things are beyond everyone's control. If it's, if an application is being checked for national security or other administrative processing. But it's highly unlikely, if someone is blacklisted or if they have misrepresented, they will be notified at the end of the interview, like what they have misrepresented. The simple thing is, it may sound simple, but it's extremely important, is to be very forthright in your application. If the visa application asks, have you been ever denied for a visa before? Please put down yes. Because if you put no, you will actually get into further trouble, and that's going to delay processing. So the best thing is to complete the application as accurately as possible. Be forthright, be proactive. If there anything is in your background, accept the responsibility, show remorse, and show how you have taken steps to rehabilitate.
Which documentation is required to prove the authenticity of that marriage?
The US citizen spouse, if they're naturalized, then their naturalization certificate. If they were born in the United States, their birth certificates. These are documents that are absolutely necessary. When the petition is approved and it moved to consular processing, when the NVC National Visa Center evaluate the application, at that time, they'll have to provide police certificate. And something that's actually very common in Bangladesh that I usually see for police certificate, when anyone uploads it, make sure you upload the front and also the back of the police certificate. Sometimes they reject it because they want to see the back of the police certificate as well. So there are simple things like this where, the handling of the documentation, if you do it properly, it can avoid the delays. And sometimes they just come back and say, please, we want this document or that document. So these are the must-do required documents. But there are also secondary evidences, which I discussed earlier about the authenticity of the relationship. So that's extremely vital as well. And that is something submitted to the USCIS at the initial stage of the marriage-based green card process.
Then how long does it typically take to process a spouse visa?
I would say on an average 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay. In between, if someone got pregnant or someone might have a child, then which thing should they do?
If someone have a child and the child parent is a US citizen, there is a process called CBRA, Consular Birth Report Abroad. The US citizen parent can actually report the birth of the child born in a foreign country, and the child will also get US citizenship.